You've probably felt it. That little cartridge that just went into your printer cost almost as much as the printer itself did. Take the ink out of that cartridge, work out what you actually paid per ounce, and you get a number that sounds made up. One American consumer test found some cartridges running from around $13 an ounce at the cheap end, up to nearly $95 an ounce for the priciest ones on the shelf. Around the same time, a separate UK test measured some branded printer ink at over $1,000 a pint. Those are specific cartridges from specific tests, a few years old now. This is not printer ink as a category, and it will not be true of every cartridge on every shelf. But they are real measured numbers, and they all point at the same strange thing. Whatever is actually inside that little plastic case, it is being priced like something far rarer than colored water. And here's the part that makes it stranger. The machine that uses that ink is often cheap, genuinely cheap, sometimes cheaper than the set of cartridges that will eventually refill it once, let alone every time after that, for as long as you own it. So what did you actually buy? And why is it built this way? Pop open a cartridge, and it is not just a pouch of colored liquid. There's ink, sure. There's a small chip that talks to the printer and identifies the cartridge. Often there's a sponge to control how the ink flows. And in a lot of designs, though not all of them, there's the print head itself, tucked inside. That's the precision part that actually sprays the ink onto the page, built right into the cartridge, and thrown away along with it every single time. That's one honest reason ink costs what it costs. Sometimes you're not just buying ink. You're buying a brand new print mechanism in miniature every refill. Other printer brands build the print head into the machine itself instead, permanently, and only ever sell you the ink separately, which means the exact same complaint, why is this little cartridge so expensive, can have two completely different honest answers depending on which printer happens to be sitting on your desk, but that's not the whole story either. Because the real number was never price per ounce. Nobody buys a printer to own an ounce of ink sitting in a drawer. They buy it to put words and pictures on paper. So the number that actually matters, the one worth building a decision around, is cost per page. Manufacturers measure that under a shared industry standard. Print a fixed set of test pages continuously until the cartridge runs completely dry, then divide the page count by the price. It's a standardized lab measurement, useful for comparing one cartridge against another on equal footing, not a promise about your specific desk, your documents, or how often you actually print in real life. But stretched out over a real ownership period, 3 years, say, or 5, it becomes the fairest ruler we have for an actual buying decision. There's a second, quieter thing worth flagging before we compare a single number. The kind of printer that takes a cartridge and the kind that takes a refillable ink tank are not really two versions of the same machine. The cheap cartridge printer is built for someone printing a page here and there. The tank printer is a dedicated, higher volume machine from the ground up, usually a bit bulkier, built to hold all that extra ink. This isn't really a story about two identical printers wearing different ink systems. It's a story about what a real buyer is actually choosing between, standing in front of a shelf, an inexpensive general printer for occasional use, or a machine built specifically to print a lot cheaply in exchange for paying more up front. Keep that in mind. It explains a lot of what follows. So let's stop talking in the abstract and put a real number on it using machines you could actually walk into a store and buy today, at prices checked the same day this was written. Take one of the cheapest color printers currently sold in the US, priced around $90, running genuine high-yield cartridges. Its black ink works out to about 15 cents a page. Color costs closer to 18.5 cents a page. Blend those the way a normal household actually prints, mostly black text, some color mixed in, and you land around 15.5 cents for every page that comes out of the tray. Now put a refillable ink tank printer next to it. A currently sold model with a typical street price around $150. Its ink, bought as replacement bottles once the included ink runs out, works out to less than half a cent a page. Do the division and cartridge ink costs somewhere around 30 times as much per page as tank ink. 30 times! On real machines at real prices checked directly against the maker's own listings that same day, not estimated from an old press release. 30 times isn't a rounding error. And it isn't a coincidence. Why would anyone build it this way? The purchase price of the cheap printer is only the entry price. The real price shows up afterward, one page at a time, for as long as you own the machine. HP's own chief executive put it plainly at a conference back in 2024. The company loses money on the hardware and makes its money on the supplies. That's HP describing its own strategy in its own words, not an outside accusation. You can see the shape of that strategy in HP's own published numbers. In its most recent full financial year, supplies, a category covering ink, toner, and related printing materials, made up around 2/3 of its entire printing division's revenue. The printers themselves were a much smaller slice of that same division. None of that tells us the profit margin on one specific bottle of ink. HP doesn't publish a figure that precise. But it does tell us which part of the business the whole model is really built around, and it's not the box sitting on the shelf. Once a machine is priced to lose money on the hardware, the ink is where every bit of that has to come back, and then some. Naturally, that gap has created an entire industry of alternatives, cheaper, non-original cartridges, sold as compatible or remanufactured ink, built with their own chips designed to match what the printer expects to see before it agrees to print at all. You've almost certainly seen them stacked next to the genuine boxes on the same shelf, usually a fraction of the price and daring you to take the risk. Independent testing has found some well-rated compatible cartridges perform comparably to genuine ink on ordinary printing. At a steep discount, one UK test found genuine cartridges running up to 286% more expensive than third-party equivalents doing the exact same job on the exact same printer. That's not a blanket verdict on every alternative out there, though. Third-party ink isn't one single product. Remanufactured cartridges, freshly built compatible cartridges, and simple bottle refills are three different things, with three different track records. So a bargain price alone isn't automatically a safe bet. The same testing found some non-original ink fades faster over time, which matters a lot more for a photo you want to keep than for a grocery list. And using non-original ink doesn't automatically void your entire warranty, but damage the ink itself actually causes to the machine usually isn't covered. It's a real trade-off, not a free discount with no downside. So let's do the arithmetic properly over a real ownership window, the way you'd actually experience it, not as one number on a shelf, but as a running total over years of actual use. Because a single per-page price hides just how fast this adds up, or doesn't. Picture 3 households all buying today. A light printer's about 20 pages a month, the odd boarding pass or school form. A moderate one, around 100 pages. Someone who works from home a couple of days a week. A heavy one, around 300. A family with kids doing homework and school projects every week. Start with ink alone, over 3 years. The light household spends around $113 on cartridges against roughly $3.50 on tank ink. The moderate household spends around $565 on cartridges against about $17 on tank ink. Already, that is not a small gap. It is the difference between refilling a cartridge every few weeks and barely thinking about ink at all. Now add each printer's own purchase price on top for a fairer total, because the machine itself is part of what you're actually spending. That moderate household's full 3-year bill comes to around $655 with the cartridge machine versus about $167 with the tank machine. The heavy household's 3-year total climbs past $1,700 on cartridges against roughly $200 with the tank. Even the light household, the one everyone assumes is fine sticking with the cheap machine, only stays ahead for so long. Line up both machines' full running costs, ink and printer together, and they cross over at somewhere around 400 pages of total printing. A moderate household hits that inside 4 months. A heavy one in under 6 weeks. Printing lightly, that crossover still arrives in under 2 years. And by year 5, even the light household comes out ahead, having bought the tank machine instead. Swap in well-tested third-party cartridges instead of genuine ones, and that cartridge side total can fall by roughly 2/3 to 3/4, a real, meaningful saving. But the tank machine's ink is still cheaper again by a wide margin, even against the discounted alternative. Push the assumptions harder, and the story only gets more lopsided, not less. Those lab-rated yields assume ideal, continuous printing, start to finish. Real households print in stops and starts, with cleaning cycles running quietly in between, so the actual pages squeezed out of a cartridge often land lower than the number printed on the box. Nobody's desk is a laboratory. Run the same numbers assuming you only get 3/4 or even half of the rated yield in practice, and the cartridge machine's costs climb faster than the tank machines do. The break-even point doesn't drift further away as a cushion. It pulls in closer, down to as few as 200 pages. One more honest boundary. This whole comparison covers ink and the printer itself, deliberately leaving out paper, electricity, and occasional maintenance parts. And it's really built around printing in color. Mostly print plain black text? A dedicated monochrome laser printer changes this math substantially and deserves its own look entirely. None of this is unique to one company either, and it's worth saying that plainly. Refillable tank printers now exist right across the market, Epson, Canon, and yes, HP itself, which sells a tank printer that directly competes with its own cartridge printers on exactly this number. Instead of a sealed cartridge with its own chip, you top up a set of see-through tanks straight from a bottle, and the printer simply meters out however much ink each page actually needs. No small print mechanism quietly getting rebuilt inside every refill. No markup that comes with one. The same company that profits from the cartridge model also sells you the way out of it at a fraction of the running cost for anyone willing to pay more upfront for the machine itself. That alone is a strong hint the expensive cartridge is a business decision, not a technical necessity. There's a third option too, sitting in between, printing as a subscription. Pay a flat monthly fee tied to a page allowance, and ink simply gets delivered to your door before you run out, based on how much the printer tells the company you've used. Plans currently start around $2 a month for a small handful of pages, rising to around $6 or $7 a month for 100 pages, with bigger tiers above that. At the 100-page tier, the effective cost works out to under 7 cents a page. If you use the whole allowance, cheaper than buying cartridges outright, but nowhere close to what tank ink costs. Here's the twist worth knowing before you sign up for one of these plans, because it's easy to miss. Print only 60 pages in a given month, and you still pay the full monthly fee regardless. Unused pages typically roll over for a while, so that's not automatically money wasted, but only if you actually go on to use that saved-up allowance later. If you never do, those unused pages quietly became the most expensive ones on the entire plan. So does all this mean the cheap printer is simply a bad buy? Not exactly, it's a bet. And plenty of people rationally win it. Think about it from the buyer's side for a second. Nobody picking up a printer for a spare room or for the kids' school projects knows for certain whether they'll print 20 pages a month for the next 3 years or 300. If you only print occasionally, if you genuinely don't know how much you'll actually use the machine, or if you expect to replace it or move before racking up a serious page count, that low upfront cost can make real sense. You're trading a small, known saving right now for a much larger, uncertain cost later that, for you personally, might never actually show up. Add in that some cartridges bring a brand new print head along with every single refill, plus everyday convenience, no bottles to pour, and a lot less cash leaving your account on day one, and the cheap machine stops looking like a trap. It's a real, sometimes genuinely sensible choice. Just one made with incomplete information about a future nobody can fully predict. What it was never going to be, though, is actually cheap in the way that shelf price quietly implies the moment you carry it out of the store, box under your arm, feeling like you got a deal. The sticker on the printer was never the real price. The real price was always what happened one page at a time, for as long as you owned the thing, long after the receipt was thrown away. And now at least, it's a number you can work out for yourself before you buy, not after.